night on the CINA 102.3 app at CINAFM.com, on TuneIn, on smart speaker, and at 102.3 FM. CINA Radio, every device, everywhere. The following program does not necessarily reflect the opinions of the management, staff, or advertisers of CINA Radio.
Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Joumana Kayrouz. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Joumana Kayrouz.
The war broke out in my home country, Lebanon. I was 11 years old, and I saw a lot of bloodshed and inequality and poverty. You can't grow up in an environment like that and not be affected by it and not want to make a difference. I graduated from Yale University with a master's in ethics. I speak 4 languages. It has always been innate in me fighting for the underdog and trying to do whatever it is I can to make a difference in the world.
Let Joumana Kayrouz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Joumana Kayrouz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
برنامج يور رايتس مع المحامية جومانا كيروز المختصة في قضايا حوادث السيارات، مع نخبة من المحامين في اختصاصات عدة منها الطلاق والهجرة والإفلاس، يأتيكم الآن على الهواء مباشرة. برنامج يور رايتس بالتأكيد برنامج متميز يقدم كافة المعلومات في اختصاصات عديدة مع المحامية جومانا كيروز على الهواء 4 أيام في الأسبوع، ومواضيع مختلفة تتنوع ما بين الهجرة والتجنس، البانكربسي، كريمنال لو، فاميلي لو، والسوشيال سيكوريتي. هذه الاختصاصات بالإضافة إلى بيرسونال انجري وكار اكسيدنت. هذه الاختصاصات حاليا موجودة في مكاتب المحامية جومانا كيروز، وبالتأكيد مع نخبة من المحامين. الاستشارات مجانية 248-557-3645. هذه الحلقات أيضا تعاد على الموقع الإلكتروني yourrights.com/radio، وعلى اليوتيوب كل ما عليكم هو البحث عن قناة جومانا كيروز. تحياتنا لكم. أرقام الهاتف في الاستوديو 313-769-6666 519-256-1023. جومانا أهلا وسهلا فيك في راديو سينا.
صباح الخير رامي. صباح الخير للمستمعين. تذكير أنه إعادة حلقة الهجرة تبع نهار الاثنين هي بتكون كل نهار أحد
بالفعل
الساعة 7 بالليل. وبعتذر ما كان عم بتسمع، ما بعرف إذا ضفت اختصاصات الوركمنز كومبنسيشن والسوشيال سيكوريتي للتقديمات. ما تواخذني. تمام أكيد. هذا أيضا واحدة من الاختصاصات الكثيرة اللي تتعاملوا معها في مكتبكم. جومانا، سمعتي أكيد بالأخبار والضجة اللي صارت إنه بعض المشاهير في هوليوود دفعوا رشاوي حتى يقبلوا طلاب يمكن غير مؤهلين في جامعات أمريكية مرموقة. نعم. عندك تعليق على هذا الموضوع؟ يس، عندي تعليق بسيط. قبل ما نبلش إذا ممكن بس نرحب بضيف البرنامج اليوم المحامي مارك غازدكي، اللي هو من المحامين اللي انضموا للمكتب واللي بيقوموا بقضايا الجنائية وقضايا الفاميلي لو، لاندلورد تننت، كونسيومر رايتس. بس بدي قبل كل شيء وجه له تحية. Good morning, Marc.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I am blessed.
That's wonderful. We are blessed indeed. I want to tell the listeners that we will be talking about family law. We'll be talking about criminal law today. Any questions you have for attorney Marc Gazdecki, who has almost 30 years of experience, Marc? Is that correct?
Almost. About 27.
Exactly. 27 years of experience. It goes by quick. Representing people in family matters, divorce matters, separation, child support, custody, adoptions, criminal matters, drunk driving, felony matters, unfortunately rape, murders, landlord-tenant disputes, sometimes representing the landlord, occasionally representing the tenant. Tenants don't have a lot of rights in the state of Michigan. Consumer rights, such as a discussion we had a few weeks ago when we had somebody who had a judgment against him and he could not afford to pay it. And we helped him in the Royal Oak District Court file a motion for monthly payments, correct?
Actually, Joumana, I got the case dismissed.
Oh my goodness!
I just saved him $8,000.
When were you waiting to tell me?
I actually sent you an email.
Oh well, when did you send me the email?
A couple days ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
I receive hundreds of emails a day, and staying on top of emails is like housework. Yeah. It's never done. Mm-hmm. Some days you feel good and some days you feel you are behind. I am on a listserv as well where I receive hundreds of emails from other plaintiffs' attorneys. We are on a forum where we share ideas, we share information when we are, when we have a difficult situation and we want to reach out to our colleagues. We are on this listserv, and as a result of that, I receive hundreds of emails a day. By virtue of the fact that other colleagues are talking to each other and I am observing, sometimes I participate, and so hundreds of emails a day.
Wow.
Tell me, how is it? Congratulations, well, I am very happy.
I convinced.
First, for our client, and two, because a dear friend of mine asked me to take care of this elderly gentleman. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I had. Well, I had past relationship with some of the counselors on the other side, and I had a long discussion with them, and I had them look at the paperwork we provided them, and I explained it to them. And I said, my client is the wrong person you should be going after. Okay. You should be going after someone who's, really has the money, which is your client's insurance, not mine, because he had insurance.
Oh, okay. So that gentleman has been saying all along that I do have insurance. Why are you treating me as if I am an uninsured driver and then suing me so that I can pay the fixing the car of the other lady?
That's correct.
And we were able.
He just needed us to provide him the voice, someone who finally listened to him.
But Mark, how can it go this far amongst insurance companies and them not realizing that his insurance was indeed valid?
Which boggles my mind.
Goes to tell you that errors can happen, mistakes can happen.
Because the police, they have the total ability to tell if you have insurance or not by just pulling you over. Their computers now tell them if you have valid insurance, when it expires, everything.
Exactly.
But with insurance companies, I don't understand why, sort of like the idea of what you said with a listserv where all attorneys talk to each other, why insurance companies can't look to see coverage.
Correct. And, I'm looking at my notes. We discussed this on February 21, 2019. And we are today March 14, 3 weeks later. Yeah. That's a wonderful outcome. And that's the right outcome. And that's fair outcome.
Correct.
And I remember my notes said that he was so concerned. He came, he's an elderly, Iraqi gentleman who didn't speak much English. And all he wanted is to make sure nobody's going to come and seize the sofa and the television and the bedroom set in his house. Correct?
That's very correct.
And we had a very good discussion, you and I and the listeners, back on February 21, 2019, about how, although under the law, if you have a judgment against you, not only can they garnish your wages, but they can execute on your property. When you're an individual, they're not really interested in doing that because they're not really interested in the resale value of your television and your old sofa.
Correct.
So it happens mostly with businesses, maybe because businesses have more valuable equipment from one hand, and on the other hand, because it shuts down, in essence, that business, so that business may be more interested in opening its checkbook and writing a check. Correct. So that they can keep the equipment and so that they can keep
Correct.
Functioning. Rami began by asking us about this scandal, this shocking scandal. I don't know if you've had a chance to read about it. Of about 50 plus people who have allegedly, we say allegedly because everybody is innocent until proven guilty. Having said that, the person who's running that whole ring admitted. He already confessed that he did all that and more. He said to the judge, I did all that and much, much more. Allegedly about 50 families, a couple of Hollywood actresses, a couple of lawyers, at least one lawyer, a few CEOs, a few billionaires, owners of large charitable organizations who have apparently paid money to get their children in schools that they would normally not qualify to get admitted into. Did you read about it?
Yes. I found it interesting that one commentator said, why didn't they just do it the old-fashioned way, which is acceptable, which is still abhorrent, but it's still acceptable. Like,
you
go and donate money, and the next thing you know, the library is named after your father.
Right. Right. But that will not guarantee your child
Correct.
in and of itself.
Correct.
That's not 100% guarantee that your child should get in, because your child should get in just based on merit, just based on grades and experience and all of that, not because mommy and daddy.
Doctored credentials.
Yes. It is. Rami, I don't know what your impression was. You know how we sometimes get asked questions on the show, and you even ask me, is there a chance the judge, can be paid off or bribed, and the lawyer can be paid off and bribed? And I always tell you no, because in this country, there are consequences.
Exactly.
So I don't know what your impression, Rami, when you heard about this scandal. I felt like I'm living back home.
Exactly.
I mean, back home, sadly, I can totally believe it. I can totally believe it. But here in the United States, I am beyond floored and I am beyond shocked. I was reading with disbelief. I don't know what to say. I guess when it was said in the holy books that you cannot worship two gods, God and money, the holy books were right on to something, because apparently in the pursuit of the worship of money, things are being done even in this country that would shock the conscience. I mean, very specifically, what they have done is they have had the students sit for the exam. Then they had people grab their exam and correct it before it goes into the box. And in order for them to do that, they needed to have bribed the proctor, and they needed a person who knows enough about the material to sit down and correct the exams. Quite often, the children did not know, the students. Sometimes some of the students, for example, the two daughters of one of the actresses, part of how they got accepted is pretending or alleging that they do rowing. They're on the rowing team. And there, this gentleman who ran this whole thing stated that he would paste the head of the applicant with the physical athletic body of somebody else.
That uses Photoshop.
Photoshopping to convince the school that they are fit and they can be part of the rowing team, because sometimes if you have athletic abilities, it gives you an edge when you are applying for.
Yeah, you can have an athletic scholarship.
Right.
You literally
it is
proven yourself by your discipline, by your physical prowess.
You got that, yeah.
You earned it.
Yes,
and
you earned it.
You earned it.
And they got the scholarship.
Yeah, it's like going to the Olympics. I earned getting there.
Right.
Not,
I worked hard. I showed up for training. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
And
athletic ability, meaning you've worked hard, you showed up for training, you worked on your craft.
Yeah, it shows that you're going to be an excellent student because you can use that same training.
Because the idea is how you do anything is how you do everything.
Correct.
Yes.
And that's always been the fundamental. Like when I went to undergrad, I went to Michigan State University. And on Michigan State University, they have a separate building. It's an old, beautiful building for just the golf scholarship kids.
Students who were gifted in golf.
Yeah, and gifted in golf. And they had their own cafeteria. They would get to travel all over the country to do the different golf tournaments. But the grades had to still be up. You still had to maintain a specific grade point.
But it gave you an edge.
But they had...
It gave you an edge.
Yeah.
Rami, what's interesting is when asked, so what would happen to these students who pretended, for example, that, they are on a certain team? Well, they haven't played. So what do they do once in their college? He said, well, sometimes they'll claim a disability, so that disqualifies them. Once they're there, they claim a disability, and sometimes they claim lack of interest. Wow. So it gets them there, and then they tell the coach, they're disabled, they have a sickness, they have an illness, something that makes it so they cannot join the team. It's it's beyond shocking. And the saddest part in all this is, I'm still in disbelief. I refuse to believe that this happens in the United States of America. I just want to say that USC, Yale, Georgetown, Wake Forest, the schools are not involved.
No.
Who's involved is...
Their employees.
Well, at Yale, for example, the school I graduated from, there is a coach who played in on that, knowing very well that the student who is applying and is not physically fit to do a certain sport is still applying. So he turned a blind eye and got paid for it. The coaches at USC, it's not the Office of Admissions. They were presented with ACT scores that were doctored before they even got to any university. SAT scores. These have nothing to do with the university. There is the application, and then there is the the athletic. Not everybody applied with grades and claiming that they have athletic abilities, but those who claim they have athletic abilities and they don't have, that's where the coaches from those universities got bribed. So it is, and then as payment, instead of paying that gentleman, he opened a charity. So they paid his charity. And I think right now he's going to be investigated by the IRS, because you can't call a bribe a donation. A bribe is a bribe and it's illegal, and a donation is a donation. Mail fraud is another thing.
Wire fraud.
And I'm sure also all the laws pertaining to 501c3. Oh my goodness. Yeah. If you're putting money, I mean, the tenet of any charity is transparency. Yeah. So I'm assuming, I didn't read it, but I'm assuming if they're paying his charity, he's getting the money out of the charity for his own personal use, and which is against the rules of running a 501c3. Yeah.
And all these universities are scrambling in their legal departments now, saying, what kind of exposure do we have?
Of course.
Really...
They are now opening their books, and they're looking at pretty much everything. They said, and I want to ask you this question as a criminal law attorney, that to date they have not charged any student.
Not yet.
But that's what I want to say. Don't you sign an application when you are a student?
Yeah.
So how can you sign an application alleging that you are on the rowing team or you are good at rowing? You cannot blame that on mommy and daddy. Because some of the things that the kids did not know. For example, when they sat for the exam and then the parents with that person switched the exam and corrected it, the children didn't know. But those who applied in part because of their physical athletic abilities, they signed an application.
You're complicit.
Exactly.
You're aiding and abetting a fraud.
Exactly. And then also, correct me if I'm wrong, my daughter was telling me this yesterday, Stephanie. I said all of them are probably under 18. And she said, Mom, don't you remember from law school? Sometimes you can, if you're engaging in adult activities, you can be charged as an adult.
Yeah.
So I would not be surprised if there will be some children charged.
There's it was just reported this morning, that one of the children of one of the actresses was on spring break.
Yes, and she was on a yacht.
And she was on the yacht with the
daughter of the board of the head of the board of trustees of USC.
On his yacht.
Yes.
And he was on that boat too.
Yes, and that in and of itself does not mean anything.
Correct.
I think they're going to now look into how his daughter...
And him, too.
Yes, his daughter and him, because his daughter, the daughter of the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the University of Southern California, got accepted to the school as well. Yeah. It is just shocking. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe this happens in the United States. I totally believe it without any proof. If you told me it happened, in some of the countries, but here I am just shocked.
We have to give our justice system some credit, though. The FBI, it was reported again today, the FBI stumbled upon this. They were investigating a coach who received a $400,000 bribe, and that led to all of these people getting investigated.
Oh, that's right. So he was investigated, and he decided to cooperate.
Sure, he did.
And that's often how it happens.
His attorney told him.
Somebody gets in trouble, and they say to him, okay, in exchange for you cooperating and us giving you immunity or a lesser sentence, spill the beans on everyone.
Yes, and that usually always happens. And the first to the door is the best, gets the best deal.
So that coach may, in exchange for exposing that
50
it's
some
being
odd
set
people.
$25 million scheme.
Yeah. But
I am shocked.
Yeah,
I
but
want to go on the
here's-
books and say I am shocked that this happens here. I am shocked.
Well, again, in the federal justice system, the federal judge, whoever gets this case, will not take any of this lightly.
Of course not.
They have.
I mean, this goes
they
to
have-
the core. We're talking ACT. We're talking SAT. We're talking test centers. I'm sure there are federal laws
this is
that
the-
govern test centers where you sit for the national exam to get admitted to college. We're talking about somebody going instead of you or somebody grabbing your exam at the SAT and this ACT score. That's very...
See, one of the reasons why our founding fathers made federal judges lifetime appointments is because they can't be influenced.
Yes.
So this case with 50 some odd cases before him, him or her, they will send a message. I'm guaranteeing you that right now.
Of course, that goes without saying. And yes, let's clarify to our listeners what you mean by state judges. They run here in Michigan for 6 years. So they are up for re-election every 6 years. So those people who voted them in the first time, they have the right to vote them out the second time or continue to vote them in, depending on how happy they are with them. Federal judges, on the other hand, they are appointed by the President of the United States. They go through hearings in Congress. They get, I don't know what the proper term is, but they clear Congress and they get sworn in. And once they are sworn in, they sit on the bench forever. They don't have to run. And the beauty of that, anyway, of course, it can work both ways. But the idea is they are talking about federal law, meaning laws that affect all 50 states. We don't want them to enact laws or put opinions out there because they want to be elected again. We want them to do it without any influence, knowing very well that they don't have to run again and they don't have to remind, whoever got them there that they promised to do A, B, and C, but they only did A or they didn't do any of that. Versus if you run for President of the United States, everything you said the first time you ran, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. They're going to flash it on television. You didn't do this and you didn't do this and you didn't do that. And the same to a certain degree with state judges. So with federal judges, they can be free to make, the whole hope is that they can be free to make the right decision without influence and worrying about an unpopular, so to speak, opinion, say an opinion on abortion. I can tell you that this is an opinion that's very divisive. You have those who are so against and there are those who are so for. And maybe your constituents are more against than for and you voted for, not against, or vice versa. They may decide to vote you out the next time. There is no concern about that if you are a federal judge.
Correct.
Because you're appointed until you choose to retire.
Correct. It's in the founding fathers' vision of separation of powers. They needed a judicial system that what they said was the whole nature is to have cool heads prevail. So you have the legislature who comes up with this law that could come up real quickly. It doesn't mean it's a good law. It's just a reaction to something that happened.
Quite often, yes.
Yes, and then the president is supposed to execute this law, and then
that is if he doesn't veto it.
If he doesn't veto it, and if he's along the lines of believing in what the legislature wants to, let's hurry up and do something real quick about this situation, even though it might be wrong, the court system slows everybody down and says, hold on, this might not be right. You guys, sure, you voted it in, great, thanks, you investigated, did all this, but it doesn't follow logic. It doesn't follow the law. The law is a long history of what's called stare decisis, decision after decision after decision. It's slowly but assuredly made that the right decision's always made.
One other thing before we remind the listeners that we're talking about criminal matters today and family law matters, and the number to call is 313-769-6666 or 519-256-1023. It is so funny. I just received from Amazon a book, a very old book that's entitled The Status Seekers. It's about America in the early part of the century and into the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, and how people try to create social standing for themselves. Nowadays, you do it by posting a picture with the president and whatever the case, and making donations that will get you in, and that has always existed. But that book is an in-depth book about status in America and how you create status. And one of the things in the first few pages that it was talking about is how education can be one of the fastest ways to break through your, say, lower socioeconomic background in order to have a chance at advancing in life. And I'm thinking about that scandal. And it greatly saddens me and saddens so others that for every one person that got in this illegitimate way, there has been a student, perhaps from a lower socioeconomic status, who worked very hard, studied very hard, did everything she or he can, and would have otherwise been accepted and would have been able to break through the social barrier by getting into USC.
Yes, we have a great example in recent history of that. That was President Obama and his wife. They did not come from affluent backgrounds.
They did not come from money.
They
did
came
not come
from
money
education.
at all.
They studied.
broke. That's, you know what? That is an outstanding example. Whether you like Obama or hate Obama, that's not the point. Both President Obama and Michelle Obama came from a low socioeconomic background in Chicago, and I believe they were the first of their home to go to college, and they were smart and they worked hard, and they both went to Harvard Law School. Nobody owed it to them. They were not Kennedys. They were not Bushes. They were unknown. He was a state senator, and he got there through, his hard work, probably also affirmative action. And that's a very good example of someone who, but for the fact that had a chance to make it to Harvard, may or may not have become president of the United States.
Can you imagine if
it's an excellent example?
Yeah, if an actor said, "Oh, my son, who's been partying all of his time in high school,
let me give you $500,000 donation."
Yeah, let me give you and get him in.
Yes, and correct his test for him and get him in.
Yeah. I went there. His mom went there. He has to go.
Right, that is correct. And you often wonder why the very, very wealthy people in the United States, we're talking about wealth of another sort. We're talking about people who have hundreds of millions or billions. You notice that they've gone to Ivy League schools and their children go to Ivy League schools. And one always wonders whether their children are as smart as they are and whether they got in on their own volition or not. The son-in-law, it was said in the news yesterday, of the president, Jared Kushner, incidentally went to to Harvard University, got accepted to Harvard University the same year that his father joined the board of trustees of Harvard University and made a sizable donation to Harvard University. Now, I can't say one way or the other if that is coincidental or whether there is any relationship. But if you look at like the Kennedys, most of them, went to Ivy League schools. John F. Kennedy went to Harvard. A number of the Kennedy kids went to Harvard. The Bushes, dad went to Yale. The children went to Yale. Mm-hmm. At least the son, the president, number 44, went to Yale. Mm-hmm. So makes you wonder whether there is an unspoken, desire for the privilege to perpetuate privilege. Mm-hmm. And if you told me that in my home country, I will say, I believe you, no proof required. But you tell me this here, it is extremely sad, because for every one child who gets in because she or he were pushed because of their name or their donation, there is an otherwise deserving child. Yeah. And those Ivy League schools are very, very small. Like Yale is so small. Yeah. So that they can only take so few. Mm-hmm. So every one child who's got in because a bit of an edge pushed away a child who would otherwise have deserved it.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, think about it. You might not have existed today sitting here if you got pushed out.
That's true. Maybe yes, maybe no. I'd like to believe personally that it doesn't. I'd like to say that it doesn't matter whether I graduated from Yale or whether I graduated from a community college. If I have the desire to work and to put one foot in front of the other, I will get there. Now, having said that, does it help and does it make me feel good anytime somebody says she's a Yale grad or an Ivy League graduate? I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you that I beam with pride, because it's hard to get to those universities. And when you get, it's like a pat on your back,
this whole situation goes back to what our country is. One of the major tenets of our country is, besides freedom, it's hard work.
The American dream.
Because it's the American dream.
The American dream.
Here,
you can come from nothing.
And you can make something.
You can be anything you want to be other than just President of the United States if you're not born here.
Yeah, but
if you're born here?
Yeah, but if you're, if it's like the scandal, you just got pushed along and you don't have the skills, you didn't live the American dream. You're not the Henry Ford who just, made it big and
I believe Henry Ford
history.
Came from a very poor family.
He did.
Yes.
Very poor.
Can't be said of his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, but certainly of Henry Ford.
Yep. All of our major millionaires and billionaires of the time, they were not privileged.
They were self-made.
Self-made. Yeah,
versus their children.
Yeah, that was a thing in the middle 1800s, all the way up to the early 1900s. You saw a lot of people who made their millions. They weren't billionaires at that point, except a couple people who had an idea, and that idea changed the world.
Indeed. Like and Ford, like
that's
Edison.
How they made their money.
Correct. Speaking of these students who may be charged as adults, although they may have signed or knew something about what was going on, tell us a little bit about that law of a minor can be charged as an adult. Number one, in the eyes of the law, a minor is under 18.
Correct.
But for drinking age, the age is 21.
Correct.
So you're an adult as far as drinking when you become 21. But as far as signing a contract or violating the law, age 18 is the cutoff. So what are circumstances under which a judge or a prosecutor may ask that a minor be charged as an adult?
Well, it's actually up to the prosecutor. They make the decision if the minor is going to be charged as an adult, and they look at the severity of the crime. If it's like murder, if it's like selling lots of drugs, arson, major crimes, they will say you're too dangerous for society. The nature of the juvenile system is to rehabilitate you, but the nature of the crimes that you have done requires that a much more stringent punishment happens to you.
So in the case of these students, is it that they are too dangerous for society, or is it that what they've done is so serious that other children be wary. It can happen to you if you engage in any such thing.
Correct. See, that's where I think that you haven't heard any charges yet against these students because they don't know.
They're studying to see how involved the children were.
How involved each one of these students were.
And there was a lady who sold her company for $325 million, and it runs a big charity. Her son didn't know. She made him take the test, and then without him knowing, she arranged for the test to be retaken and corrected. So it can be argued that that child did not know, versus when you put on your application that you do rowing and this and that, and you know you don't. That's another story.
Yes. And I have some feelings for the person, like the child you were saying, who did know about the test change.
Yes.
Now I didn't know.
No.
But now my reputation is soiled because of what mommy or daddy did.
But the question now becomes, will the school look again at his application to see, how would they know? Will they have a copy of the first exam so that they can judge based on that?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I think that it depends on how long they are in their education. Are they a freshman now? Or are they a junior now?
Yeah.
Because if you're a freshman,
This is a mess. This is a huge mess.
Because if you're a freshman, I can say, well, wait a minute, we can refuse you admission now.
Right. I can assure you that
proven,
all the universities throughout the country are worried sick right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you're like a junior right now and your grades are pretty good, like a B average, for example, you've proven that you can with a word called matriculate in our college, which means you have the ability to study and show that you've learned, which we've taught you. Maybe that person will be allowed to stay in.
And then, God forbid, some of these kids will be kicked out, and then they can face lawsuits from the parents.
Correct.
Very sticky situation. Yeah. It is a shock, again, to know that happens here in the United States is a huge shock. We have 15 minutes remaining, and if anyone wants to call, we are talking to attorney Marc Gazdecki from our office, who is one of our criminal law and family law attorneys. You can ask any questions you want. Attorney Marc Gazdecki, what are some of the calls that we have been receiving lately in our office?
Interestingly, it's the girlfriends of their boyfriend who needs a divorce.
The girlfriend of the boyfriend who needs a divorce. The girlfriend of the married boyfriend who needs a divorce. Why is the girlfriend calling?
Well, because normally, and I've found this to always be true for all the years I've been doing this, the boyfriend's usually at work. They're usually too busy to think about their moving on in their life. And he has kids.
The girlfriend is eager to get rid of them.
She's the motivator.
She is motivated to get rid of the wife.
Yeah, which is pretty much always the truth in life. You're busy, and then someone brings you back to reality, saying you have to pay bills.
Is it not true, Attorney Marc Gazdecki, that typically the person who asks for divorce and wants to go through with the divorce, regardless of the problems in the relationship, is often more the woman than it is the man?
Correct, because they're more present in the relationship.
Who is more?
The woman.
The woman?
Yeah.
So do you agree with me that although a man may think that things are not well and he's unhappy, he is likely to not want to ruffle feathers and make do, live with it, and not ask for divorce?
Yes, it's more of
Where do you think this is coming from?
Issue. It's
now I know in the Middle Eastern community they talk about, I don't want to break my family.
Correct.
What about in American society?
Similar. It's very similar. It's along the lines of when you took the vow, you took the vow of love and relationship and security.
I don't think it's about the vow. I think it's about money, and I think it's about the kids.
Sure, it's always about the money and the kids. The person who's looking down the barrel of a divorce, he's like, wow, I'm going to have to pay child support. I might have to still pay the mortgage on the house.
I may be kicked out of the house.
Kicked out. I might not have any money.
And another very important factor that discourages a lot of men from wanting to file divorce, even when they're unhappy, is they worry that the family will be broken and the children will be lost should there be a divorce. Because now there is mommy's house and there is daddy's house. Mommy may introduce them to another man and daddy will introduce them to other women. And what will happen to the children? I find that an overwhelming reason for why a lot of Middle Eastern men do not pursue divorce, although they're unhappy or although they are miserable or although they are carrying on a relationship with others, is because it's the concern of the children. They think that all things being equal, it's still better to be unhappy under one roof for the children than to break up that relationship. Do you find that to be the case also among American men?
Yes, most definitely.
So it's a men thing.
Yeah, it's you don't want problems. And
the separation is going to create that.
But they don't realize that by not addressing the problem, you're creating other problems. Like you're not giving the kids a great role model.
Okay, it's like
mommy and daddy don't talk,
or mommy
and daddy scream at each other and throw at them, or hit each other,
or violence. It's almost like what set of problems can you live with?
Yes.
Would you prefer hell at home, screaming, yelling, abuse? Or would you prefer another set of problems? Oh, I now have to raise the kids too, and I have to go pick them up, and they might get exposed to other men, and I'm telling them something, and their mom's telling them something, and now she's going to drag me to court, and now she's going to want more child support. And so that's
the new family.
Right. And we are sad. Not saying here, we are just analyzing.
Correct.
We're not offering an opinion one way or another, but I am in whole agreement with you that children who stay in a home that is abusive are also going to grow up, and they're going to be one of two things. They will either be abusive, repeating the behavior that they have seen, they will mirror it, or they will be psychologically very damaged by it. They will not be healthy children.
Most definitely. I saw that happen today in court. It wasn't my case, but it was a case just before mine where...
Was that in Wayne County?
Yeah, it was in Oakland County.
Oakland County.
And,
which judge?
It's in the Southfield District Court.
Okay.
And the litigant, the defendant, he was brought in for violating his probation because this was his second time being convicted of domestic violence. And
convicted?
Yes. Of it, and his wife he was not allowed to be near his wife nor his son because they were the victims of his second time being a domestic abuser. One day, he caught a bus. He didn't have a car. He caught a bus to go get some medication for himself, and the pharmacist, the father, the defendant, and the pharmacist said, well, I need your wife here to get your medication because there's something wrong with insurance, and she's an insurance card holder.
Yes.
She comes.
Now, he calls her?
Yeah. And she comes doing the, good wife thing, but now what he should have done was he should have walked away for a while, let her talk to the pharmacist, and then leave.
Yes.
And that he wouldn't have violated any of the court orders saying don't see your wife or son.
Correct. And it
However,
is,
she
and it
stayed
is for a
around.
legitimate reason.
Yeah, and she stayed around and said, okay, I'll take you home. I understand that one of the things you need your medication for is you can't walk right. You must have had gout or something. I don't know. And took him home. But before she took him home, she went back to the house, picked up their son, who he's not supposed to be with either, and took him to work. His son then turns around and calls the police while he's at work and tells on his mother and his father that they broke the court's order.
So how did
the police
judge
come, arrest him, He's staying now a day or two in jail because
he violated
by, now mind you, no violence against them, nothing. It's just he was there, and the judge was very upset.
He dropped his defenses for a minute.
Sure.
I mean, this was not intentional.
Well,
he was not
did.
meaning. They all did. They all did it. But
but the judge had to remind him and her, because she spoke up eloquently
couldn't
for her.
Couldn't the judge be more lenient?
Oh, she was. She was going to put him in jail for over a week, but then she listened to what his wife had to say and
Which
listened to him.
judge was that?
It was Judge Arvan. She's a wonderful judge.
Yes.
And she said, "Look, I'll give you a break, even though that you have to understand that you caused all this, sir. You have anger management issues, sir. Your wife is taking blame for actions that all resulted because of your actions. Your son has issues," when they were talking about issues that the son exhibits, like he's not going to school, he's having police issues, probably all because of mom and dad are not living together right now, and all this situation of which we've been talking about.
Right.
So I thought that, I was like, wow, this is another result of, a marriage that may or may not work. I don't know.
Marriage is a very, very important thing, and entering into that relationship with your eyes open for the right reasons, not because it's time to get married, not because it's time to have kids, but for the right reasons, because you love that other person, because in goodness, in sickness and in health, for rich and for poor, and you know who that person is, and you've done your due diligence, and you accept them as they are, and you can live with them as they are. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. You're damned if you stay married, and you're damned if you don't, especially if you have children.
Correct.
If you don't have children, that's easier. But if you do have children, you have to be civil for the sake of the children for the rest of their life.
Correct.
Speaking of domestic violence, you brought up off the air something that may interest a lot of our listeners, the VAWA, the Violence Against Women's Act.
Correct.
Which touches upon immigration and touches upon domestic violence. We're talking about people whose spouse may have brought them from overseas, and so their right to get the green card and therefore the citizenship is derivative from their husband, and the husband or the wife commits domestic violence, and now they are in fear that they're not going to get their green card or their citizenship. And you talked to me briefly about how VAWA can flip the situation in the favor of the victim of the domestic violence and allow that person to get the green card and citizenship, although the sponsoring party no longer is interested in giving it to them. Correct?
Correct. Under the law, the sponsoring party,
meaning let's say for a minute the husband. Let's say the husband is an American citizen. Let's say the husband marries a wife from Iraq or Lebanon and brings her here.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then usually what happens in the abusive situation, it's not always physical abuse. It could be the statute lists a number of issues.
Types of abuse,
which is like money. I won't pay for anything. I'm always going to control the money. You come to me to ask me what you want me to purchase for you. I will purchase that for you. I can keep you away from any friends or family you may have over here unless I tell you can go see them, and I have to be with you when you go see them. You can say, if you have children together, you can say to that your spouse, if we don't work out, I'll keep our child and I'll have you sent back, and you'll never see our child again. What the law allows you to do is to,
if you are the victim,
if you're the victim of
this kind of domestic
and it
abuse,
doesn't even have to be
it is
charged. It doesn't even have to be charged.
So that's what I was going to say, is do you have to prove that the other person
you just have to
has been convicted of that abuse?
No, it helps.
It helps, of course.
But if not, then all you have to do And under the application, it just says, what
application?
There's an application for the green card under VAWA.
Okay, so we're talking about people who come here because their spouse is American, and then something happens in the relationship, and the spouse doesn't want to let them get the green card.
Correct.
In that application to the green card, there is a place in the green card that says what?
That says, well, under the VAWA green card application. I forgot what they label that as.
And we will ask Attorney Sam Safe about that.
Yes, it allows them to apply without ever notifying the husband.
So even if they have been separated.
Correct.
Even if they've been separated, and even though the husband, we're going to say husband is not always a husband, but can be a wife, but let's say the husband we think is guilty of those, but he has not been neither charged nor convicted.
Correct.
Nor pled guilty.
Correct.
So this is merely allegations.
Correct. But it allows you to write your allegations down, and he'll never see them.
Okay, and the USCIS officer will decide whether they are legitimate, whether they are believable.
Correct.
And if they are believable,
then
although your husband no longer wants to give you the green card, you will be able to continue on that.
With as waiting in the system for your time for the application process.
رامي انت سامع عنه هيدا القانون VAWA Violence Against Women's Act انه وقت اللي شخص بيجيب زوجته او جوزها لهون على الولايات المتحدة وبيصير في اختلاف بيناتهم وبيصير في violence يعني بيصير في عنف مش ضروري يكون عنف جسدي ممكن يكون عنف معنوي يمكن يكون حرمان من المصاري يمكن يكون كنترول إلى آخره بلا حتى ما يكون هيدا الإنسان متهم أو convicted إذا هيدا الشخص حرم اللي جابه لهون قال له أنه ما بدي كمل لك بوراقك ساعتها under VAWA بحق له الإنسان يكمل على الجرين كارد ويحكي ظروفه وهون USCIS officer هو اللي بياخد بعين الاعتبار إذا اللي عم ينقال مزبوط وفي is believable is credible وممكن USCIS officer يكمل بالابليكيشن ويعطي هيدا الشخص الجرين كارد مع أنه السبونسرينج بارتي اللي هو جوزها لهالست أو اللي هي مرته لهالرجل ما عادت بدها تعطي السبونسرشيب
بالفعل.
انت سامع عنه
هذا القرار بالفعل.
نعم.
What's also interesting under the act is that spouse, if she thinks that she can't stay in the home, she can get housing services, she can get food stamps, she can get health care, she can get education for a second language.
Housing services, food stamps,
education,
education.
Yeah. All paid through the government.
Oh, paid through the government.
Yeah.
And what does she or he have to prove?
Well, just
those allegations.
Yeah, just the
Again,
allegations.
It doesn't have to be. Those allegations don't have to result in charging and or convicting
just
the sponsoring
just
party.
that an immigration officer thinks that it's true, then
so obviously she or he will get those services after she or he applies for the green card.
Correct.
What happens to that time period very quickly between the day she or he arrives and the abuse begins and the day she's eligible to apply for the green card? How does she or he live?
That I don't know.
Okay. But VAWA does not cover that.
Well, they can. It could if for example.
We should ask Sam that.
Maybe
VAWA
example,
extends.
If you are charged or convicted, that would speed up the process of getting your food stamps, housing, because you can here. I got a court order right now that says he can't be near me or my children.
We will confirm from Attorney Sam Safe what happens to those people who suffer this well before it's time for them to apply for green card, because I'm sure that the sponsoring party, one of the first things she or he will do is withhold money.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Most definitely.
Yes. And I think I have heard something to the effect that you can get the government to pay. But of course, this is just me thinking we need to confirm that. Maybe I can get that answer for tomorrow, because tomorrow, Friday, is when we recap the whole week. We recap Monday's immigration. We'll probably call in call in Sam Safe to talk about that issue, and then talk about medical malpractice. Moving on to today's topic as well. We'll recap them all tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you.
شكرا جمانة، وأكيد نشكر كل مستمعينا على حسن الاستماع. استمعتوا من برنامج Your Rights على راديو سينا 102.3 FM.